weighs about 200 metric tons. So 200 metric tons is roughly the same as about 2 fully loaded 737s. It's a very small footprint because it's almost solid steel. There's a few gaps and air gaps in there that we have. There are acceleration geometry chambers, resonant cavities. But the magnet that we use for containment in here is really what gives it all its weight. So how does the accelerator work? There are no moving parts inside the accelerator. We accelerate with radio frequencies, electromagnetic fields. And we do that by creating a proton stream. But it's actually quite a simple process. The technology that we use was accelerators from the 1940s. It hasn't changed much. What's really changed the system to be able to treat patients was what the precision and control and the ability to manage and maintain sub-millimeter precision for proton beams didn't really exist with control systems until about the mid-90s. So at that point, we had the ability, we had this proton stream, we had the power, we had the energies, but what we didn't have was the ability to control it with that kind of precision. So we had to wait for the technology to get to a point that we could actually control it, understand it, and be able to manipulate it in a way that we could treat cancer volume. So how we create this proton with hydrogen. We take simple hydrogen in gas form, or we can take it in liquid form, and we'll make a proton from that. We ionize that. So how do we do that? We can do it in two ways. We can either have a hydrogen generator where we make hydrogen ourselves from distilled water, or we can use bottled gas. So we use a high-grade bottled gas, and from that gas we'll create that proton. Well, the idea with the energies that we use and how we treat cancer volumes is that it's all about the energy. It's not about the quantity. So people, we get a lot of questions like, how many protons do I get on any specific treatment? And I can't give you an answer because everybody's different, but I can tell you it's a lot. It's a big number. But because we're using hydrogen protons and the atoms are small and so light, volume-wise, it's not that great. So let me see if I can put this in terms for you. If I was using a hydrogen generator to create the hydrogen protons, we would use a hydrogen generator just like your high school physics class. We take a tank of water, we put an electrode at one end, an electrode at another end, we put a positive voltage on one and a positive on another one with maybe a simple 9-volt battery, and they start to gas off. And one side would put out oxygen, and the other side would put out hydrogen. We take the H2O and we make H and we make O. And then we'd use the H and we discard the O. Well, if we were to do that with a hydrogen generator, and we were to make the proton that we needed for 1 full year, we can treat all the patients in all the fields for an entire year on 1 quart of water. That's all it takes. So it's not the volume, it's the energies. We're gonna take this inert mass and atmospheric pressures, and with no acceleration, we're gonna create this proton. And the reason we create the proton is because when hydrogen is just hydrogen, it's inert. You can't do anything with it. But if we strip an electron away and give it a positive charge, now we can do all kinds of interesting things with it. We can accelerate it, we can steer it, we can focus it, we can do all those things. So the first thing we have to do is create the proton. So we take the hydrogen gas, we run it past the filament, and we superheat it. The filament is just like the filament of an incandescent light bulb. We just run an electrical field through there. It makes that filament heat up, and as we pass the gas past it, it heats the gas. Once we get the gas heated, it becomes very excited. It's easier to strip the electrons away because we just run it through an electrical field and it attracts the electrons away. What we end up with is a hydrogen atom with a missing electron. But now it's got a positive charge, so now we can do some interesting things with it. And that's how we accelerate. So if you can think of this accelerator as a very solid piece of steel with a very narrow gap in the middle. And the middle gap is like right along this edge right here where the seat is. This accelerator splits in two. And these hydraulic jacks separate these two sections, and we can open this up a little over 1 meter. So we can create the upper section, lower section, and our engineers can climb inside it and make it. And we do that twice a year. We just did it 2 weeks ago. So every November, around Thanksgiving time, and every spring around Memorial Day, we shut down for an extra day. We open up the accelerator, our guys go in and we do all our maintenance, then we close it down and hopefully we're good for another 6 months. So if you think about the acceleration, it's kind of like when you swing a weight over your head that's on a spring. The faster you swing it, that spring will start to extend. You swing it faster and faster, it goes out further and further. The principle's the same that we'll do here. We'll use the magnetic fields to accelerate in one direction all those protons. And as they go faster and faster, the protons will start, they want to fly off into space, they're going to go further and further away. But what we do is we take the spring away and we replace the spring with a containment magnet on the outside. So as the protons are trying to fly out into space, we have this giant containment magnet, and the containment magnet just forces the protons back in. So the protons are going faster and faster and faster. They're fighting that field and they keep pushing further and further out, and the containment magnet is trying to push them back in. But we know from physics that a proton, or a hydrogen proton with one missing electron, has a very, very specific mass. And we know that when we keep our containment magnet a very specific energy, that what will happen is to get to a very specific energy that we want for an extraction product, we want a really narrow band of energy. We know that when we get to a very specific radius, that we have a particular energy. So at that radius, we have a knife edge. It's a very fine knife edge with a very high electrical voltage on it. We call it electrostatic reflectors. And what happens is when we get to that edge and that very specific radius, any protons at that energy will get through past that knife edge and will get shot down this beamline. Anything that's less than that will go around for another turn and continue to be accelerated until it gets to that energy. Anything that's too much will pass the knife edge and we won't get that. So what we end up with is a very narrow plasma proton beam that's a very specific energy at 230 MeV, mega electron volts. Okay? So the containment magnet is quite large. It's quite a powerful magnet. So, we play around because when we're working on the accelerator, we have tools in our hand. Instead of setting them on the ground, we stick them up on the side of the accelerator so they're within reach. But we need this magnet at a very high level because we're talking about extremely high energies. It takes a lot of energy to even take a small hydrogen atom and get it to the energies we want, which is a little over 2/3 the speed of light. So if you think about it, when we talk about photons, you talk about shining your light, you talk about the speed of light, that's a photon. It's energy, but it's not physical. It's not a physical. We're actually taking something physical that has mass, and we're trying to speed it up to the same speed. It takes a lot of energy to do that. So, with these energies, we can treat into the human body up to a distance of about 23.5 centimeters, which for most people is deep enough to get to any tissue we need to in most people. If you get something that's really large, sometimes you can't get to all the areas because you can't reach the center. And that's where we hit the limit of our system. But for most people, we can reach all the tissue that we need to reach. Which is sometimes when you get treated, when you go through treatment, you receive multiple gantry angles. And the reason why is, for instance, when I went through Proton in my prostate treatment, one day I got treated on this side. The next day I came in and I got treated from this side. And that's typical for most Proton or for most prostate patients because to get to the center of your tissue mass, the center of your body, you can't reach the whole thing from one side. So you can treat one side, you treat a little bit past halfway, and then you come over the next day and you treat from this side. And we do that. And sometimes for pediatric patients who may receive as many, we've had patients receive as many as 8 fields for Proton. But that's pretty rare. Usually the average is about 2 or a little more than 2. Okay. So we shoot this beam down this feedback, and then because we still have an ion, and because this proton plasma still has a positive charge, we can use magnets to bend it and to steer it. But the acceleration is done. Once we leave the accelerator, the speed we have will be the only speed we have for the rest of the duration. So what we do is we have to do everything under extreme vacuums. So we have a deep vacuum in the accelerator and a medium vacuum in the pipe here for the beam line. And that's so the protons do not come in contact with any water vapor or just typical atoms that are in the air, right? Because if it comes in contact with anything, there'll be somewhat of a reaction. You'll start to slow things down. You'll start to scatter a few atoms. So we want a very, very pure beam. So we keep it under vacuum the whole way till it enters the nozzle of the treatment.
Is this all happening in real time, and is this all happening while you're on the table?
This is all while you're on the table. Yeah. So the accelerator is always on. We don't shut it off. The only thing we do is we enable the beam to continue down the beam path and steer it into the room. And we can only deliver it into one room at a time. So this is kind of like a railroad switching yard. When the rooms are in the queue for treatment, you'll be put into an automatic queue that our operators, the MCR, will control. And when the beam is finished in one room, we'll switch it to the next room. And then we'll set up the properties for the accelerator to give us exactly what we want for your treatment. And then we'll turn on the magnets and we'll adjust it to give us the beam into that room and for that treatment. And then when that treatment's done, we shut off those magnets, we turn on another series of magnets, and we switch it to the next room.
Where do the proton and neutron part ways?
Well, you create neutron from proton engagement of some other material. So what happens with radiation is you start with an energy. And as that energy comes in contact with different materials, you'll create other isotopes. And some are quite nasty. Some isotopes have huge half-lives. We're a little different than what you would expect from the typical radiation issues, because in a power plant, or a radiation power plant, or the power plant for a nuclear submarine, you use actually nuclear material. You start with radioactive material. We don't start with that. We start with inert materials. We create radiation after we have the energies. Whatever that energy comes in contact with, whatever it hits, can create radiation. And so you'll find that different parts of this beam line have somewhat different levels of activation, only because they're in constant contact with beam all day long. But typically, we're extremely careful about the materials we build our systems with and what they come in contact with. So that there's very specific tungsten steels we'll never use. There's specific types of metallurgy we'll never use, because if they do come in contact with either proton and a certain energy, it can create isotopes that are really hard to get rid of. So typically, we're very careful about the types of metals that we use. So we use very specific metallurgy in our components. And we try to keep very few things actually in the beam path. We use a lot of brass. Brass is not so bad, but it does become activated over a period of time. But typically what happens is when we segregate that, we put it into a safe area, and after about 60 days, it's back to background levels. But if we put certain types of tungsten steels in there, or some carbide steels, it would create some certain isotopes that would be around for, 800, 900 years. We don't want that. So the neutron is only created when you have proton acceleration and it comes in contact with things. The proton will create neutron radiation. And the neutron is kind of a difficult animal to shield. But what happens is, as soon as you shut the proton, as soon as you shut the acceleration off and you're not creating a proton beam, the neutron goes away immediately. So it's only the product of actually coming into contact with accelerated protons. To give you an idea of the shielding, neutron is not, lead is not a very effective shield against neutron. In fact, that's one of the reasons. I remember in the 60s when they were talking about the neutron bomb. Right? We're developing the neutron bomb because you could explode this neutron bomb in the atmosphere, and the energy would penetrate and go through everything, would kill everything alive, but leave all the infrastructure. So later somebody could come back and turn on the power plants and restart the cars and everything would still work, right? That was the idea. So what we have to do is we have to find creative ways to shield. And what we do is the wall behind you is 20 feet thick. And that's one of the reasons that these facilities are expensive, is there's a lot of concrete. And one of the things we do with the concrete to make it a little more effective is we impregnate it with boron pellets. So we take plastic boron, we add it to the concrete and mix it up. So it's a high-density concrete with boron impregnated, and it allows us to make the shielding wall a little thinner and still have the same effective shielding. So the cement, being very specific, has to be made locally as we build a facility. So somewhere within about 30 minutes drive, you have to have a concrete plant making your concrete, because it only has a life of 90 minutes. From the time it hits the truck, you got 90 minutes to pour it, or you have to throw it away. It's no good. So these facilities are kind of expensive to put together, right? And a lot of it's in the concrete of this equipment here. So we keep everything under a deep vacuum so we don't scatter the beam. And then we can use our magnets to both focus, bend, steer, and defocus our proton beam to give us the product we want at isosite. Okay? To give you an idea of the hydrogen, right now we're not using a hydrogen generator. We have the ability to do that. We can just make it with distilled water. I don't like that because we use so little. The hydrogen generators don't like to work on really small volumes. So it does work, but it tends to be a little bit temperamental. So we replace it with bottled gas. We can have a very clean, specific pressure all the time. And if you look down in the pit, and if you can't see it now, you see it the way up. Underneath, way in the back, there's a little green bottle. It's only about this tall. That green bottle will last us for 10 months. So